In north-central New Mexico, the Rio Grande River winds its way through the Jemez Mountains toward the Gulf of Mexico. Along its journey, 10 million people use the river for drinking water, irrigation, and recreation. The Rio Grande is the lifeblood of New Mexico, a land in constant thirst for water. Joni Ahrens is Executive Director for Concerned Citizens for Nuclear Safety. CCNS, a Santa Fe-based organization, increases public awareness of nuclear safety issues.
And there's a lot of people that use this water right now for irrigation of crops, for watering livestock, for watering gardens, their vegetable gardens. And Albuquerque's planning on drinking this water, so is Santa Fe.
But the Rio Grande's water quality may be threatened. 1,000 feet above the Rio Grande, on the Pajarito Plateau, sits the Los Alamos National Laboratory, or LANL, a nuclear weapons research and development facility. Since 1943, LANL has buried at least 18 million cubic feet of radioactive and hazardous waste on site.
Over LANL's 60-year lifetime, they have buried millions of cubic feet of contaminants such as radionuclides, plutonium-contaminated waste in plastic bags, in cardboard boxes, and covered it with dirt. They've buried trucks that have been contaminated, and there's just millions of cubic feet sitting on the Pajarito Plateau.
CCNS is concerned that LANL's buried waste has contaminated groundwater that flows into the Rio Grande. David Englert works for the LANL Oversight Bureau of the New Mexico Environment Department, or NMED, a state agency that provides environmental oversight of Los Alamos National Laboratory.
My opinion is there is waste leaving the site, and that is an important issue to address.
George Rice, a groundwater hydrologist, is a consultant to CCNS.
Well, we know that the site is leaking. They find contaminants in the shallow groundwater there and in the deeper groundwater, so it leaks. The question is, do fast pathways exist between LANL and the river?
In other words, does LANL waste move fast enough that it has already begun to contaminate the Rio Grande? That question is the foundation of CCNS's Rio Grande Watershed Initiative.
We want to find out what's happening with the water because the Pajarito Plateau is leaking, and it's leaking contaminants. And we want to find out what those contaminants are and where they're coming from.
Fast-moving contaminants, including perchlorate, a highly toxic chemical, and tritium, a radionuclide that organisms mistakenly process like ordinary hydrogen, may have already reached the river.
We're also concerned with the heavy metals, the plutoniums, the americium, the radionuclides, but we think that these fast-moving contaminants that are at the river may be showing pathways from Los Alamos.
Those pathways may exit through the numerous springs that flow into the Rio Grande.
And they're all springs that emanate from the groundwater that is under the laboratory.
Well, the springs are pathways from further up above, possibly Los Alamos, down to the river, groundwater flow pathways. And they may be pathways that allow contaminants to move from Los Alamos and emerge here at the river.
To find out, CCNS organized a collaborative research team to study the springs. That team conducted studies in October 2002 and in April 2003. The October team included George Rice and representatives from CCNS, NMED, Rio Grande Restoration, and the Radioactivist Campaign, or TRAC. In April 2003, that team was joined by representatives from Amigos Bravos and LANL. The October study identified two areas that demanded additional research: the newly identified CCNS Spring and Spring 4A.
If fast pathways exist, that's where we may be most likely to find evidence of them in terms of contaminants at the springs, finding contaminants at the springs.
CCNS Spring, discovered by the research team in October 2002, is already attracting scientific attention.
CCNS spring is interesting because it seems to have a distinct chemistry from some of the other springs along the river, possibly indicating that it's influenced by lannel.
The chemistry of samples analyzed by NMED in late 2002 suggests the CCNS spring may drain a test well from below the Los Alamos town site. If so, CCNS spring is the first confirmed pathway from lannel to the Rio Grande. To verify that data, CCNS, TRAC, NMED, and lannel jointly sampled the CCNS spring in April 2003. NMED and lannel collected water samples from the CCNS spring to test for trace metals and inorganics, including uranium, potassium, and nitrate. While NMED and lannel focused on the chemistry of the CCNS spring, TRAC sampled for radioactivity. TRAC collected and analyzed samples of Russian olive and willow leaves to determine whether TRAC could detect lannel radioactivity at CCNS spring. Norm Buskey is TRAC's director.
At CCNS spring, we did not find any radioactivity from the lab. Any radioactivity there was below our detection level.
Although TRAC did not detect radioactivity at the CCNS spring, TRAC did find radioactivity from lannel in Spring 4A. Samples collected in October 2002, just downstream of Spring 4A, tested positive for radioactive cesium-137. Those samples suggested Spring 4A contains lannel contamination. To verify that finding, TRAC collected water, moss, and sediment samples from Spring 4A during the April study.
We took so many samples, 5 different sample media, in order to sort out all the possible alternative sources, whether the cesium might be blowing in the wind or in dust or have somehow intruded locally. What we had to do there was determine the source and the pathway of the artificial radioactivity.
TRAC's analysis of those samples confirmed that cesium-137 contaminates Spring 4A. Based on that data, TRAC says cesium-137 is leaking from Los Alamos National Laboratory into the Rio Grande.
We have found clear evidence of lab waste leaking into the Rio Grande. That evidence is at very low levels. That means it is an early warning of what is coming behind.
But I don't think there's a doubt that there is an impact. There are wastes and materials, legacy wastes that are going into the Rio Grande and downstream.
The low levels of lannel radioactivity detected at the Rio Grande are the tip of the iceberg. If left unchecked, the migrating waste will increase and might eventually reach dangerous levels. TRAC's findings provide an early warning of a potential disaster.
This early warning allows the public and the government time to take corrective measures before catastrophe strikes.
CCNS is addressing this early warning through the Rio Grande Watershed Initiative. That initiative raises public awareness of the threats to the river so that concerned citizens can become involved in the issues.
We're running out of time, and the public needs to be able to talk about these issues and be involved in these issues because it affects us all.
To protect the Rio Grande watershed, public concern and pressure are needed to stop pollution at its source.
The public gets involved by coming to our meetings, by checking out our website, by listening to our radio show that's on stations around New Mexico. People get involved by writing letters, calling their congresspeople, and just talking this issue up.
Public involvement will pressure lannel to take responsible action to protect our river. Together, we can secure the future safety of the Rio Grande. For more information about Los Alamos National Laboratory or related topics, contact concerned citizens for nuclear safety at www.nuclearactive.org or the Radioactivist campaign at www.radioactivist.org.